Welcome everyone to GMS Podcasts. I'm Jamie, head of GMS Singapore office. Today I'm joined by GMS Chief Sustainability Officer and the lead of SSORP, the Sustainable Ship and Offshore Recycling Program. Welcome Anand to the podcast.
Thanks, Jimmy.
In ship recycling, most incidents are not caused by a lack of rules. They happen when routine takes over, a job looks familiar, the team feels confident, and a few checks get skipped because everyone wants to keep things moving. Today's conversation is about the small moments that interrupt that routine, the pause before lighting the torch, the extra gas check when conditions change, the supervisor deciding not to run two jobs on top of each other, the worker who speaks up about a near miss and sees something actually get fixed. We'll walk through the training we have been delivering across yards in India, Bangladesh, and Pakistan and share what those topics look like in real working conditions from the perspective of workers, supervisors, HSE teams, and yard owners. No big claims, just practical habits that reduce risk shift by shift. Anand, people hear training and often imagine a small classroom session. But SSORP has been operating at a very different scale. What have we delivered till now?
Well, as of today, we delivered 781 safety awareness training sessions and we reached 12,036 yard workers directly. We covered 70 distinct topics across India, Bangladesh, and Pakistan. And it is important to say this very clearly that these trainings are conducted free of cost to the workers
Why is free a deliberate choice?
because access should not be a barrier. If we want safer habits to become a routine, workers need to be able to attend without cost pressure. We are not chasing certificates here. We are building consistency through repetition and practical coaching.
And scale matters because repetition matters, right?
Exactly. One session creates awareness, repeated sessions create a habit, and habit is what you see on the ground.
When people ask what we train on, it helps to explain it as a system rather than random topics. How do you describe the core areas?
We generally focus on everyday high risk realities of ship recycling. The topics apply everywhere because the risk mechanisms are the same. Even when the yard layout or the language which the workers communicate changes, so the risks remains are going to remain same. So what topics we cover mainly here are to starts with the permit to work, for example. Like in that case, we will also be talking about how to plan and control high risk tasks. So work starts with authorization, checks, and clear responsibilities. We have training such as hot work and gas cutting disciplines. We also look at the equipment checks, flashback arresters in this case. We work on confined space awareness, which is very much important when it comes to ship recycling. In case of confined space awareness, we talk about atmospheric hazards, entry control restrictions, how to communicate in such scenarios, and why conditions and how conditions quickly change in confined space awareness. Similarly, we also have trainings on lifting and material handling where we talk about rigging basics, we talk about signals and communication and how to safely, what are the unsafe practices while lifting the materials. Along with that, we also cover about the work related aspects, for example, heat stress and fatigue, because the workers who have been working in ship recycling yards are working in an open area at extreme weather conditions. So for them, what should be an hydration routine, how to take rest, how early they should be able to recognize the symptoms of fatigue. So these simple actions working under a heat will help them to quickly take actions and get recovered. Apart from that, we talk about areas such as near miss reporting, how to report a near miss, how supervisors should respond in case of reporting of a near miss, how learning happens without waiting for an injury. We also cover not only health and safety, we also talk about environmental awareness and waste handling, which is very crucial when it comes to ship recycling aspects. How to segregate, store a hazardous waste, how exactly you do a spill prevention, what are the daily practices that one yard should have, right from its cleaning operations to waste management to toolbox stock. There are, as I said, there are about 70 distinct trainings we have been covering. It also includes about emergency readiness, what to do in case of an emergency, what are the different types of emergency scenarios, and who will communicate in case of an emergency, how the worker should come and stand in a muster place, which areas or the which respondents will be working during different emergency scenarios. In a nutshell, these are the topics which are the day-to-day requirements in a ship recycling yard we cover.
So the goal is not theory.
Absolutely. It is to help people recognize risk early and act consistently. So, what happens when we focus on theory? The people who work in a ship recycling yards, they are not used to sitting in a classroom and doing the theoretical work. Everything is practical over there, and there is no much machinery involvement or robotics involved in a ship recycling yard. It's still a labor intensive ship activity, and workers need to be told and taught what to be done and what not to be done.
Can you share a realistic example? Not a dramatic story, just something that shows awareness improving after going through all these training sessions conducted by GMS.
Well, it's an interesting question. See, we have conducted about 781 trainings so far, right? A common pattern is a cutting team arriving and wanting to start work immediately, right? Consider this scenario. What used to happen earlier is these cuttermans might have been taken, definitely they have taken training from a training institute, and they know their work. They come in and they start the torch and start cutting. But what happens when we started giving them repeated trainings? They started questioning. They started checking before the work whether the hot work permit has been given or not, whether the team has understood the hot work permit or not, whether there are pre-checks to check any leakage of the gas, whether the area is clear for cutting hot work or not, is there any adjacent area where there is a gas leak. So these kind of descriptions coming from workers and the cutter team itself shows there is an increase in the awareness, and they started realizing the risk and acting towards mitigating those risks.
Okay, near misses are one of those topics everyone agrees with in principle, but the real test is what happens when someone reports one.
Exactly. Here is a realistic scenario. Consider a sling slips slightly during a lifting of a cut block of a ship, or someone notices a hook with a deep wear marks, or a block shifts more than expected. This is a scenario you can say. Before the training, the instinct can be, oh, we got lucky, we just move on, it was a slight error. The crane man did not look into it, but somehow he could able to lift it because of his experience. But what happens after the training is there is a behavioral shift. So if something of that is happening, people were reporting it immediately because they need to lift different blocks on a particular day. So the reporting has become very quick. Then people will come and say there is a problem with the sling. So then the supervisor, the cutterman team, and not the cutterman team here, in the supervisors, the HSC people will go to the site and do a proper risk assessment. And they inspect the gears, they set up a replacement, repair, and there is a pause in the work, which is very much important in ship recycling yards. Before you do a work, there should be a slight pause. You see, you sense if there is a risk, what can happen if certain activity goes beyond the control. The key is that workers see a response. When reporting leads to action, people keep reporting. So the key is here, when somebody reports it, it should be appreciated and there should be an action towards it. Then only it motivates the people to come and clearly mention the near misses.
That's a very good insight. If we see, heat is not always treated like a core safety issue, but it affects everything.
In my opinion, heat is a risk multiplier. The word multiplier I'm using here because a simple change we encourage is a short heat check built into toolbox talk, right? For example, hydration, or they need some ORS ready things. They need a shade plan confirmed. There is a supervisor watching early symptoms. It is not about stopping a work, it is about preventing a fatigue from pushing someone into a bad decision with a torch or a lift or a climb. So the human behavioral shift might change takes because of this external environmental conditions.
Okay, so I know that like your team over there in ground conducts a lot of mock drills. So let's talk about it. People sometimes see drills as a tick box exercise.
See, a good drill is is a practical experience, and it brings out how exactly the people will react in case of an emergency scenario. It's very simple. So when people with a good practice, who have done a lot of drills before, they will act very normally whenever there is such kind of an emergency situation. The word normally, I mean their response to the situation will be in a much more controlled and calmer manner, because each and everyone knows what exactly they have to do in such scenarios, right? Whenever a tick box thing happens, in that case there is no actual mock drill, that is just filling up a paper. Say we run a mock drills for workers and supervisors, they do a lot of rehearsals during that practice. They using the right kind of an fire extinguisher, for example, knowing who leads, who call for help, who will manage the rest of the people who are not impacted, whether the people understand the siren tones or not. That's a basic thing. So what this particular siren tone is meant for them, whether the people working on board a ship, they are able to hear that sound, they know that there is a fire incident because of this sound, they know that this is a work at height issue, this might be something related to fire at the yard, fire on board. So understanding each and every siren tones is very much important, and that brings in from the mock drill. And mock drill is also a point where the mistakes, the gaps which has been done during that mock drill are also been noted, and based on that repeated mock drills are done so that the same mistake is not repeated.
So, one thing I want listeners to understand is that the yard is many layers of responsibility. Training lands differently depending on the role. Am I correct?
Absolutely. Everybody will be responsible for certain job, but whenever there is an emergency, there is a coordination between each and every team, right? That's how the emergency response team works. For example, the workers involved in cutting operations, there are workers involved in who are just doing and helping operations. There are fittermans, there are people who are designated for hazardous waste handling. There are people who are designated for only working on board a ship, working in and removing the loose items from ships. So each and everyone is playing a different role, and the risks associated for that particular activity is also different. But there is an interrelation between the activities as well. Or how I could explain this one is like there is an, for say there is a block of a ship where the person is sitting and cutting. In that case, there should also be a crane operator who will be holding the piece of that particular block to avoid that block to fall on the people who are cutting it, right? So there is a coordination between the crane operator, the cutter man in this case, and along with the helpers might be helping him to move the oxygen, LPG cylinders, or trying to clear the area. The crane helper might be giving a signals to the crane operator on when to lift that block, whether the cutting operation is completely done or not. So there is a coordination between the team in activities, but each and every person has a group has a different role to play.
That is what ground level change really is. Not one person being careful, a system behaving consistently. Alongside training, SSORP also provides technical guidance when yards ask for it, especially as HKC expectations increase. We will not go deep into that today, but it is part of helping yards strengthen systems.
Absolutely, the focus remains on training, but when yards request for help turning trainings into a site procedures, permit workflows, demarcation, emergency readiness, or practical improvements aligned with Hong Kong Convention, we support that guidance as well.
To keep this honest, what remains difficult?
Complacency and time pressure. Familiarities creates shortcuts. People with the perception that I have been working in this industry from last 15 years, I've been working from 20 years, I have recycled n number of ships, I have recycled the sister vessel of this ship, I know ship in and out, I am nothing has happened to me in last 15 years, nothing is going to happen to me in future. That kind of mindset creates shortcuts. That is why we repeat the core disciplines again and again. You cannot start a work without a permit. You might be an expert in that, but everyday situation changes. In a ship recycling yard, the moment you cut a block of a ship and take it from the ship to an yard, the scenario on board a ship completely changes. It can create a confined space, it can clear a confined space, it can create a work at height situation. Next time it might remove a work at height situation. it might create a problem somewhere because there are pipes connected to different parts of the ship. So that understanding is very much important. Experience is good, but risk is always there. We need to understand that, we need to respect that, and go with the system, follow the system, where experience does matter, but analyzing the risk, working with the system, following the standard operating procedures, that what matters.
Anand, if you could leave one message each for workers, supervisors, and owners, what would it be?
Well, it's a very interesting question. For example, for say workers, we start with workers here. Professionalism is in the pause. Professionalism is not in how quickly you are able to do this work. Professionalism is how efficiently you did the work, not causing problem for yourself and for your colleagues who are working along with you in the same area. Always stop when you sense a risk, report near misses, stop when conditions change, working conditions change. This is what workers have to keep it in their mind. For supervisors, it's very important that they don't put a pressure on the workers. So what happens, as I answered in my earlier answer, that when you put a pressure on the workers, they start taking shortcuts. So the behavioral based response has to be there. If you insist somebody to do certain things in a very quick manner, there are chances that they will skip that step. So better for the supervisors to keep a close tab on the workers, whether they're following an SOP, but don't push them for production. For owners, they need to back the entire system. It's important, very important, to maintain calibration of the equipments, buying new wire ropes, support their health, safety, and environment team, support their supervisors, create very good working culture in a ship recycling yard without the blame game. They need to reinforce that irrespective of the market situation, the way the ship recycling is conducted on a day-to-day basis has to be in line with HKC standards.
That's such wonderful insights. And from GMS, we see this as an industry responsibility. As industry leaders, we want to help ensure the entire ship recycling ecosystem is prepared for the challenges ahead, especially as standards and expectations rise. The most practical way to do that is to keep training consistent, accessible, and real on the ground. And that is why these sessions are delivered free for yard workers. Thank you, Anand, for leading this wonderful initiative from the ground.
Thanks, Jimmy.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. This is Jamie Dalzell, and see you next time.